Hi, everyone, and welcome to Failing Up, a limited series from the shallow end about our collecting mistakes, how they impact us, and how they help us better understand ourselves and this hobby. It's about those unpleasant experiences that ultimately make us better collectors. I'm Dave Schwartz, and I wanted to do this series to help us all feel a little less alone in this hobby. We've all made mistakes. No one's perfect, and maybe we can learn from each other. In this 18th and final episode of Failing Up, we welcome Dave, known on IG as Paper Street Sports Cards. When Dave came back to the hobby, as so many of us did, he did a little exploring and discovered cards he found interesting. But when he approached the so-called experts about what he found interesting, they told him his point of view was wrong and preached a better way of doing things. He listened. Spoiler alert, the experts were wrong. So let's welcome into the episode Dave, who on Instagram is Paper Street Sports Cards. Dave, thank you for being here. And if you would, please share your mistake or the decision that you made in the past that maybe you wish you hadn't made.
So thanks for having me, Dave. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the content you put out. The decision I made was to allow other voices to creep into my collecting. And it all kind of ties in strangely with the name of my IG handle, Paper Street Sports Cards. I don't live on Paper Street. That is a reference to the movie Fight Club and Project Mayhem that ensued. So Project Mayhem was something that I kind of created myself in my collecting early, and really had to do with when I had re-entered. I'm a hobby cliche. Collected as a kid, came back into the hobby world during the pandemic, and started collecting by opening up packs the way I had, 15, 20 years earlier. And in doing so, discovered the parallels, discovered the kind of things that I liked, really loved collecting football that way. However, one day on a lunch break, I stopped into a Detroit area hobby shop and saw somebody breaking some basketball there, and was just talking about how different the hobby is from when I had collected as a kid. And when I talked about the types of things I was going after, parallels and serial numbered things, both the hobby shop owner and the person that was in there collecting said I was way missing the boat, that base cards are the wave of the future. Sounded odd to me, as it does. I see the face that you're making. And now even hearing the words coming out of my mouth, it's one of those things I can't believe, I even gave it a second thought. But it sounded strange to me. And as you and I had talked about prior to coming on, I drive a lot. And so driving home that day, I downloaded a couple of podcasts, hobby content podcasts, and that's exactly what they were talking about. PSA base cards. That's the wave of the future. They made references to, you've got arenas full of, let's say for basketball, 18 to 20,000 people in the arena. So, the Trae Young pop count doesn't matter because Trae Young's a star, and all those kind of things. So mistakes were made. I thought, hey, I'm new to this again. And I kind of bought into it a little bit. And so as I built another Fight Club reference here, a copy of a copy of a copy, trying to build a collection of what I thought the new wave was, I realized one day that I really didn't care about any of it. And that was something that was really put to a new level when everybody started catching up that, hey, maybe this isn't what we should be doing. So as I continued to evaluate and see what I wanted to do with this, I looked inward on, why did I really allow that type of collecting to enter what I was doing? And what I really came to was it was money. It was one of my favorite TV shows is Pardon the Interruption. Everybody loves PTI, right? Tony Kornheiser a lot of times references one of his mentors and always recites a line: the answer to all your questions is money. And so the answer, when I was really honest with myself on why I chose to listen to the voices that said, base cards, collect a lot of them, the answer was money. I was allowing that to enter into my world. And I was trying to build this collection, this portfolio of assets was really what I was doing. And so when I came to terms with that and realized I wasn't collecting, I was accumulating, and was really honest with myself, I started looking at, okay, what do I really care about? And it always came back to football. It didn't, matter. And I brought this out of my room upstairs. And I don't know if you can see that. It's ye old box of poor decisions. And so as I continue to sell off all the junk that I had accumulated during that time, I kept a number of them, and this is full. It's a heavy box, but I put them in this box and I keep it right with everything that I have collected and things that I love as a reminder to trust my instincts, because my instincts were nowhere close to collecting base cards and graded base cards as what I wanted my collection to be. And when you talk about, failing up, I don't know that I would be as confident in the way I collect now had I not gone through that period of time where I collected as I thought I should be based on what other people were talking about. And what I came to then realize, as a lot of us have come to realize, is all these podcasts that we're talking about collecting PSA base cards, the answer to all your questions is money. They were well invested in that world. And, you and I had talked, it was right around the time that you and I first started chatting on Instagram. And that was around the time that you had done your I'm going to listen to every hobby podcast that exists. And that was kind of as this time, what period was for me that I was making this transition. And so that's it. That's really the failing up story. Is it's not a card that I bought. It's not a one mistake. It was a collection. And it was many conversations on podcasts. It was many conversations with hobby shops and other collectors in those hobby shops that, although I respect other people's opinions, absolutely, they can approach the hobby any way they want. What that experience helped me understand is I can respect it, but I don't have to follow it. I don't have to do it. And building confidence in the hobby is something that definitely helped me do.
The word that I really latched on there is you used the term confident or confidence a couple of times. And I think a lot of us have been where you were when you're starting out and you feel like there's this chance of quote unquote doing it wrong, whatever wrong would possibly mean. So just to back up a little bit, when you were in the hobby shop and they said, no, it's base cards. And then when you're listening to the pods and they're saying base cards are how you're going to do it, was there any sort of a low level fear or anxiety that like, oh, if I want to do this right, then I need to pivot from what my instincts are telling me what I want to do?
It was, it maybe not anxiety. It was more, I took a long break from when I collected as a kid, and I put together my binders of Cincinnati Reds players and, 87 Topps and 91 Donruss and all those kind of things. Because I had taken such a long break, there was a part of me that felt like I needed to catch up. And I really just got myself in a big hurry and wanted to catch up as quickly as I could. And it seemed that for a period of time, all those base cards during that time, 2021, 2022, everything was just going up, right? And so you could buy anything, and in 2 months, you search for a price online, and eBay sales were infinitely higher than where you had bought it just 2 months earlier, 5 months earlier. And so for a while, it seemed, I'm glad I got this advice. So in the early days, there was no anxiety to it. But what then ultimately I came to realize was, who am I collecting for? I'm certainly not collecting for myself, because I'm not a Hawks fan. I'm collecting Trae Young. I'm not a Knicks fan. I'm collecting RJ Barrett. I'm not a huge fan of the way either of those guys play basketball. They're great NBA players, but I have nothing to latch onto. I was collecting Cody Bellinger during that time. He was having that great MVP run, and they were all just base cards. And I thought, hey, if I continue to collect these, as the price goes up, I can sell off some to pay for the other ones, because my goal is always to have a zero cost basis in the hobby, to consolidate and use what I have in the hobby to be able to move into the collection that I want. And so for a while it was working. And I guess that's the one silver lining is, as I continued to do that, and as they went from a couple $100 a piece down to 15, I think some of them are $7, $8 if I was lucky, not even worth posting. All that was hobby dollar spend. And so it wasn't like I was taking money out of our grocery budget or anything like that to do this. So that's the silver lining. The other silver lining, I think, is had I gone into the type of collecting that I love to do now, concentrating on my players, Burrow and Ellie De La Cruz and Tom Brady. I think because those prices were so high on the things that I like to collect now, I wouldn't have been able to do it anyways. So as with everything, there's duality to every mistake you make. It's the silver lining is you can get into it. I actually did bring the first bigger card that I ever bought, and I don't know if you can see that. It's the 2020 Select Premier Level Tiger Stripe Joe Burrow, and you see if I pull back a little bit.
There you go.
And the way I moved into this was, as the PSA 10 and PSA 9 base cards I started to realize this isn't what I wanted to do. This was a card that it was in Fanatics and PWCC at the time, and was at auction, was ending up for about a third of what it had last sold for just 7-8 months prior. And I thought, you know what, I'd love to have that card. Like, it's all I thought about for the week leading up. And I thought there's no way I could do it. And the way I was able to do it is to consolidate a lot of the junk that I'd collected. Some of it was pennies on the dollar, but it did two things for me. One, kind of made more space in my collecting closet, but it also allowed me to see the template for how I was going to collect from that point on. And that's consolidation. Everything comes from within the hobby to pay for the hobby. And when I find what I really want to move into, I have to, our friend Brett calls it Judgment Day, right? I have to look at what I'm going to do to be able to move into what I want to move into. And so the other thing that the base card experience and listening to other people allowed me to do is to realize, for future consolidation, again, the answer to all your questions is money. As soon as I look at a card and I think about how much it's worth, I know it's on its way out. I just do. My favorite cards, I don't even know what they're worth. I mean, I have a ballpark. We all have a rough ballpark, but I'm not Googling or going into Card Ladder for comps on some of the really important cards to me, because that's not why I'm collecting. I'm no longer an accumulator like I was in the early days of coming back into the hobby. I became a collector. And I think that's the most important thing that the experience gave for me.
When the Tiger Stripe Burrow arrived in the mail and you opened it, did it feel in any way different from the other cards that you had been collecting? And if so, how?
I just stared at it. I twirled it at the light. I put it on my desk. I hung out with it. Whereas anytime I know we talk to our spouses about the things that we do with our sports cards, they think, are you 12 years old still? You're carrying around a piece of cardboard. But I really did. I kept it with me, and I looked at it every day for I don't know how long. Whereas when all the copies of the PSA graded base cards came in, it was just, there's another one. It was just filed into a box, and there's no waiting at the mailbox for the postal service to come. There's no tracking the UPS tracker to see when the delivery is going to be made and how close they are to the house, and to make sure I'm by the door when they come so I don't miss the opportunity to sign. It was mail unopened for a period of time with the base cards. Now nothing waits to be opened. When it's finally something that arrives that I know I've worked so hard within the hobby to consolidate and sacrifice things, because we love all these cards, but we can't just buy whatever we want. It has to come from somewhere. And so all the sacrifices that happen for the mail days now, and they're a lot rarer than they were when the base cards were coming, but damn, are they more important. They're a lot more important.
No doubt. So I think the last thing I'd like to ask you is, I'm going to jump back to the beginning about listening to the wrong types of voices. First, it was the LCS, it was the pods. But part of the hobby is talking to others and listen to others, and who we surround ourselves with, whether people we actually converse with or those we just listen to electronically. How do you decide now? Or let me rephrase that. What kinds of voices do you surround yourself with now? Who are you listening to these days? And even if that includes yourself, that's great. So how do you decide who gets to be in your orbit?
It's a selection of 4 or 5 podcasts. Obviously, I mentioned Brett with Stacking Slabs, and you run the risk as you start mentioning podcasts that you listen to. I'm going to leave people out, but I listen to Jeremy Lee and the Crossover, and I just really, and what you'll notice with all of them, it's all pure collector content. It's not ways to make money in the hobby, because what I've learned is the focus on the money really put me off track pretty quickly. And so from a podcast standpoint, it's 3 or 4 or 5 podcasts, and with all the driving that I do for work, I could definitely fill up with more. And I've thought about going back to some that I was listening to, but I'll just throw on some 90s alternative. I'll just go back to listening to music. From the other aspect, the other thing that collecting what I really love, I love the Cincinnati Bengals. I love the Cincinnati Reds. When you collect what you love, it's amazing how quickly you develop great friendships with other people who collect. And many people, I mean, this is the first time you and I have ever spoken to each other, but we've messaged on Instagram for years, and it developed a friendship through messaging on Instagram. So other collectors, when we find each other's pages, it's all card talk. It's all talking about the teams, and I have friends. One of my best friends in the hobby is Justin Smith, 740 Smith cards, and I know you've talked to Justin before as well. He's an interesting one because all our teams align with each other, and so most of the time we're not even talking about cards. We're talking about the Reds or the Bengals and those kind of things. But I would have never met Justin had I continued to collect base cards, because the only way we found each other's pages is because he had he had a great AJ Green collection. He has a great collection of Reds players, and so I found his page from there, and we started talking about each other's collections. And so those are the kind of relationships that I really listen to and value as we throw ideas on. I'm thinking about going after this. What do you think? This is what it's going to take. And those kind of things. It's nice to have somebody who's semi like-minded. We don't collect the same things all the time, and we come at it from just enough of a different angle to where we can kind of point out the blind spots that we may not be thinking about. So hopefully that answers the question that you had asked.
It does. And this has been such an instructive story. Dave at Paper Street Sports Cards, thank you for sharing your tale, and congrats on putting together a great collection, and take care.
Thanks, Dave.